All right, so hello everyone. We're fortunate enough to have a competitive athlete in track cycling for 17 years, and lucky to have him today. Very successful, having competed in the World Championships, actually having won a medal in the Olympic Games, and we have Shane Perkins of Australia with us today.
G'day everyone. Great to
Appreciate
be
you
here.
coming on. Yeah, appreciate you coming on. So, I was thinking with all the uncertainty going on in the Olympic Games, getting ready to come up and everything. We had it canceled from last year. COVID still affecting everything. No fans in the arenas and stadiums this year, so things are a little bit different, and a lot of adversity going on for these athletes that are getting ready to go compete there. So I thought it'd be good for you to kind of share your insight with us and give us some of your mindset, maybe unlock some winning principles that you kind of instilled throughout your career, and basically just kind of tell us how you became so successful and handle that adversity. So I'd like to kind of begin with, I think all athletes have their own pre-competition routine. Can you maybe kind of tell us how you got your mentality locked in, kind of just being in the moment just before your races?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one thing with that to remember is that it's like anything you do with your training. So obviously, training in the gym or whether it's on the basketball court or on the track, the velodrome, you're always training to be better. And I think with the mindset side of things, everyone obviously comes from different backgrounds, brought up differently, so they obviously have different ways that they, process things and handle certain types of situations. So I learned fairly quickly and early on, that I had to really work on the mental side of things, basically my psychology, and that I guess you hear this a lot, but you're working on it like a muscle, basically. And I knew that that would take time, and it did take time. Like I knew I went to the Junior World Championships, I think, when I was 16. Didn't do very well, but I was sort of pinned to win a medal there. Didn't do very well. To turn things around in a year, and the next year I won when I was 17, actually, in Los Angeles in 2004. And kind of seeing that myself, I knew that this was going to be pretty massive moving forward, and getting myself ready for my dream of going to the Olympic Games and winning a medal. So I think it's something that you definitely need to put a lot of work into. I got myself a sports psychologist. Been working for him for about, I think it was 13 years by the time I finished up with him, and we're still great friends now. But he obviously helped me put into or create a bit of a framework. And basically, the main thing out of it that came out of it for me was awareness. So awareness of what you're thinking about in your head. Like, are you going down a positive thought mindset, or are you looking at the negatives? Are you looking at things that aren't actually contributing to your success? They could be positive things, but they're not actually keeping you in focus with what you're actually doing. So the way we worked around that was obviously building awareness. So knowing when your mind's starting to drift, when you want it to be in focus with what you're doing. So basically we use trigger words. We built some trigger words around things that meant, a certain thing for me. I've written a couple of them down here because it's been a while since I've used them. But so something, for example, like, when I'm getting ready to go up on the track and do a race, one of the things we found was, I was a pretty relaxed athlete generally. In the center of the track, I could joke and have a joke with the teammates and things like that, and sort of chat to everyone. But I was really quickly as soon as I sat down just before the race, I could really shift my mind into, okay, here and now, what are we doing? But then we found when I got on the track, sometimes I'd slip, I'd be looking at the crowd, what's going on there, and I'd lose my focus. So we brought it into focus by using a couple of trigger words. One of them was push and forward. So again, simple things, no rocket science here. So I was pushing forward, and then I'd just say to myself, let it rip. The let it rip part was basically me telling myself to be in the moment, and not overthinking any of the decisions that I was going to make during the race. So for me, all the work was done in the preceding events leading up to that. You refine your craft, in the gym, out on the track, with all your training in the tune-up races and things like that. The work's all done there. All you need to do at this big race or big event is to just let it go. Basically, let it rip. Go out there, do what you can, review afterwards. So I think, trigger words is a massive one, and awareness. So awareness of what's going on in your own head. Is it, are you shifting elsewhere? Is your focus going somewhere else? And then being able to pull it back in and then hit yourself with the trigger words.
Awesome. Good stuff. So yeah, fans, no fans, whatever, just preparation's the key, and then being in the moment, knowing that you put all the work in to get yourself to that point right there, and then let it rip.
Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah. Like it sounds simple, hey, but you got to find the things that work for yourself. And that's one of the things that led me to quite a lot of success over quite a long period of time. And it's simple.
That's fantastic. Good. I appreciate that. That's really good stuff. So I guess leading into that with what you just kind of said, an athlete can't overcome bad coaching. So what would you say is maybe one or two of some of the most important team building exercises or individual exercises that you did with your coaches in order to get you to that moment?
Yeah, look, I unfortunately, like with the Australian cycling team, we never really did a lot of team building kind of stuff. I think the framework for ours, like I think it has really great value, because to be able to build trust with a coach is massive. Like I was very lucky to have had some really fantastic coaches. Obviously one of them being Kelly. I was really lucky to come in contact with these people and to have them support me and continually learn things from them. So, I think one of the biggest things I found being in the Australian team was that we almost lived in a bit of a like camp environment almost year round. And I think that was something that initially started. We were just in this camp environment, and we had some really, really, really amazing results. But what we found is as the athletes kind of got older and they had, their own lives and partners and things like this, it became really difficult for them to cater to these older athletes. So I think one of the things we found later on, and especially in my case, because our program was centralised in Adelaide in South Australia, and I was based in Melbourne, Victoria, with my family. We had a few kids at the time, sort of in my mid-20s. So I was actually training out of Melbourne by myself. My coach was in Sydney as well. So I was just doing basically my own training with a motor pacer in Melbourne. But one of the really good things to keep the bond with the athletes I was going away with and the coaches I was going away with, I'd actually send them through motivational quotes and things like this to try and boost the team. So I guess you could say I took on a bit of a leadership role. But also what we found is when I'd then come into a camp 2 to 3 weeks leading up to an event, I'd come in and I'd sort of, again, would take this leadership role, but you found that it obviously brought the team together. And then because the head coach at the time wasn't my coach, my thinking was that if I can offer him something that's sort of bigger than him just being my coach, and so that it didn't sour any of the grapes with him, that I'd take on a bit of a leadership role. And basically in doing that, he then became closer to me. And then we saw that there was obviously no ill feelings or anything within the team. I'm kind of being kind here because there's a few experiences that I have had that weren't amazing with some of the coaches as well. But yeah, look, they've all got their specific qualities. And I think the important takeaway there, I think, is that as an athlete, you want to be coachable as well. Like at the end of the day, we are all humans, and the coaches there are, whether they're doing the right way or the wrong way, they are still there to try and give you the best support and try and get you to where you want to be. So I think it is about being coachable. It's also about communication. I think there's, some of the well, one of the best coaches I've ever had was my first coach, and then the coach that led me to, a couple of world championships and an Olympic medal. And with those two coaches, my first coach, he was pretty hard. Like he was a hard ass, man. Like it was really good, but he set the framework for basically, you work hard and, you see the results. But, we always had open communication and we were always really honest. Like as a young kid, I remember I had, a bit of a late night as a youngster, turned up to training in the morning. I was like, I'm a bit tired, coach. And he's like, look, you make your bed, you lie in it. You're here, you got to train. That's, and I think that's important. He just sort of told us how it is. And like, if you're going to turn up here, make sure you're ready to go. We're not slacking off, we're not doing that sort of stuff. And it wasn't about punishment or any of that sort of stuff. It was, again, just about communication and having a positive frame of mind when you are training. And, my other coach, again, it was all about communication and building that relationship with the coach. And that's where getting to know them as a person, they're getting to know you. That's where that trust builds up. And basically at any point you'd kind of run through the flames for each other, sort of thing. So I think it takes time. It is about communication. I think I actually heard you talking about this on a podcast recently, is getting to know where they've come from and what their background is, and getting to know their families. And that's really important. Like that was one of my coaches was massive on that. He'd sort of have a chat to my parents and things like that. He'd talk to my wife. He'd check on how the kids are doing, and he realized that our lives are, what's going on outside of sport is kind of bigger than the sport, but they contribute in a massive way to our results. So I think the biggest one there is definitely communication, and that builds trust in the end, for sure.
Awesome. Isn't it amazing, like how hard you'll work for a coach when you know that he actually genuinely love, care, and accept you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's huge, man. Yeah. And look, I honestly, on that too, like when my coach that I'd worked with for about 8 or 9 years, and like this is to some extent on me, but not on me in terms of why he was moved on. He was the assistant coach at the time. He coached me up to the London Olympics, and the head coach and him they weren't seeing eye to eye, and they moved my coach on back to Sydney, but I was still in Adelaide. So I basically had to move on to the head coach that was there, and let go of my coach that I'd been with for so long, and build up this trust. And I had a really close relationship with this coach, and then I was actually trying to build this relationship with the current head coach at the time, and it was really difficult because he found it really difficult to open himself up to like more than one athlete. So I found that really difficult, and my initially I thought I handled it really well. After that, there started to build like a bit of resentment and a bit of anger, because I'm like, hang on, I want to build up a rapport and trust with this guy. And it's kind of not happening. And that was on me. Like I was getting frustrated. I should have thought of potentially different ways that I could have handled those things as well. So I think I'd say that honestly, it's probably unfair to just lay it all on the coach, because again, it comes back to being coachable as an athlete too.
Right. Yeah, no doubt about it. So you had a 17-year career, ups, downs, wins, losses, good days, bad days. Can you maybe touch on, so with all of your success, world championships, go through your journey, the process, you get to the Olympics, you win a medal. That's not the end of your story. So you're got another, goal after that. How would you say, or what was your best approach? And it may have changed throughout your career. Like, how do you just not become complacent? Like, how do you move past success? So you have success. How do you move on and stay motivated to like get to that next goal?
Yeah, David, look, it's an awesome question. It is kind of a difficult one to answer, to be honest, but because I think, it is easy to become complacent because, certainly when, like I won my first world championship in 2011, and then we backed it up with another one in 2012, and then 2012 Olympics, won a medal there. So I kind of a string, even 2010 to 2012, like medaling at the Worlds and then winning. There was like, this kind of 2.5 year period where on the world stage, I was starting to really, really get some success. But I think the really, really important thing there is that you have a solid team or just good people around you to kind of keep you, I guess, level, to sort of, I say pull you into line, but I don't think there was never a point where I thought that I was, this amazing thing and became complacent in that way. I think to some extent, like it was easier to become complacent, that you kind of forget how hard it was to actually get there, because you've got there and then you're just thinking about that moment and you think, wow, that's amazing. Like, oh, okay, I want to do that again. But then sometimes, you become complacent about, well, look at that hard work, because you seem to, before you have success, and you've probably seen this yourself, is the athletes are working that hard because they haven't tasted it yet. They're going so hard, then they get it. And, oftentimes we forget, I say we, even though I'm retired as an athlete now, but we then forget how hard we actually work to get there. And I think the realization for me was I had surgery on my shoulder in 2013. So just after the Olympics, and I missed the World Championships in 2013, and had surgery on my shoulder. I was out, couldn't really do anything for about 2.5 months while we're trying to get it rehabbed and everything. Because actually, the story behind this is I got hit by a car leading up to the World Championships 2 days before. Oh. And I didn't actually know it at the time, but I got hit by the car and I dislocated my shoulder, but it went back in. And I didn't know that had happened because it was happened so quick, and I got hit off my bike and a lot of adrenaline. Got back to the team hotel and I was like, shoulder doesn't feel so good. Saw the physio. He's like, yeah, it's not really good. But we had to race in 2 days. So I'm like, all right, just strap it up and away we go. And then got scans. Yeah, sure enough, I needed to have some surgery on it. But obviously we had the Olympics, so had to keep going until then, and then got it done after the Olympics. But had this surgery done, and obviously I kind of lost a lot of the training that I'd built up. Like, yes, it doesn't take too long to bring it back, but the thing is, again, it's that hard work that you'd put in before. It's still going to take that. Like, I like this quote about, train smarter, but just as hard, because you always hear, this quote, or I've heard it a lot in my career from a lot of people, is, oh no, you need to train smarter, not harder. It's like, well, no, you need to train smarter, but just as hard. Like, it doesn't become easier just because you're doing things smarter or in a more efficient way. The effort still has to be there. It still has to be really, really high. So yeah, back to the realization for me was, had this surgery, obviously was rehabbing it, doing the things that I can, but I came back on and started training thinking that, I just won an Olympic medal not that long ago, was world champion, things are good. I've got that behind me, jump on the bike, away we go. Shit. Like, I'm way off here. I need to get this work done. And, I think I went to a couple of races towards the end of 2013, or probably mid 2013. And like, I was still going well, but I just, there was something kind of missing. I couldn't back up my races and things like that because I'd lost that background. A couple of junior athletes started beating me, and I was like, I need to fix something here. So that was kind of the trigger for me to go, all right. Like, I obviously had people around me that were sort of saying, well, look, you've had, 2-3 months off trying to get your shoulder right, all that sort of stuff. But for me, that wasn't okay. I wasn't okay with that. Because I think coming back to success, it's not, and where I'm going with this, it's not just about, winning or being the best. Because at the end of the day, there's only one person that can stand on the podium. And, when you're at the top level, it's anyone's podium, really. Like, you get there. I'll give you an example. So 2011, Chris Hoy was a 10-time world champion. He's a British rider. And I think he'd won the last maybe 6 or 7 Keirin World Championships in a row. And we've lined up in the final, and he's in the final. And I'm here, I had a bad race in the sprint the year before I got a silver medal. In 2011, I'm lining up in the Keirin. The previous event was the sprint. I think I ended up coming 5th, and I was quite disappointed because I wanted to win that year, wanted to go one better. And lining up in the Keirin final, I'm just like, you know what? Doesn't matter. Like, any one of us can win here. And it was just that thought process that then I went out there and just did what I had to do. I just did my job, and I beat him. He came second, and I was the first person to beat him in, I don't know, something like 6 or 7 years. So, it's that in itself, like, obviously I won, so there's some success there, but it's more that process leading up to it. I think that's more important. I think it's really unfortunate sometimes when we do have athletes, and sometimes we don't know all the athlete stories. We only hear about the people that are on the top step. But a lot of the time, the story of the athletes that potentially aren't getting on the podium, their stories and their journeys much more unique in terms of the growth that they've had from where they've came, where they've got to, the adversities they've had to go through as well. So I think it's much bigger than success. It's it's about growing as a person and as a human. And towards my late 20s, I started to realize this a lot more, because I was just so focused on the end result and kind of forgot about who I was and what I was kind of becoming through all this as well. So I think I know that's going kind of pretty deep. So there's probably a few athletes that aren't quite at that point yet, but I think that the big intriguing thing for me is why do we get into the sport that we do? Obviously we see some things on TV and we think, we want to be as good as them, or which is fantastic. But like, how does it make us feel? It makes us feel amazing. When we're going through the processes with our coaches, with our families, with our teammates, I think they're the like important things to me, is that, I hate to say it, but it's that journey. The word's used a lot. It's the journey along the way, and basically seeing how far you can take yourself. Like, how do you absolutely maximize your time doing what you were doing? And that's where I kind of got with it at the end, and how I was able to kind of, I guess, keep on going through for as long as I did. Not having all the success that I wanted. Like, okay, I won a world championship. The thing is, I wanted to win gold at the Olympics. I wanted to go to multiple Olympics. Unfortunately, I missed 3 of them that I could have, maybe a couple of them I probably should have been there, but politics plays its part. But then we move on and we look to other areas. But again, it's not, I think success is a bit of a fickle thing. There's a bigger thing at play there, for sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think one thing it made me think of is, you said the process and the journey, and sometimes you focus on the end result, but like the relationships that are formed with the people when you go through that process with, it's a life-changing, event, and those people are with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah. I think that's like, you've hit it on the head there. It's not, any of the results, you take them away, like you take them off my CV. That's not what's made me who I am. It's that process with these people around me and the friends that I've met, that lifelong journey, that's built me into, who we are. That's the important bit. Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned the R word. You said you're retired. And we're not calling you the old guy yet. But when you said that, I always reflect back on when my guys who play in the NBA for a long time, and they come back and they speak to the team and kind of talk about their journey. In your opinion, now that you're quote unquote retired, what words of advice would you have for the newcomers in your sport and that next generation of up and coming, athletes?
Yeah, I think Oh, yeah. So three words: patience, persistence, and hard work. I think if you can nail those three things, because the hardest thing I think when you're young, and again, not everyone's the same, but the thing that I definitely see, like even being in the team, as an older guy, and there's the 18, 19-year-olds coming through when I'm in my 30s, is they all want to get there really quickly. But things like, building muscle takes time, building resilience takes time, being able to push through really tough challenges mentally takes time. And you need the patience to be able to let that happen and work through that from week to week, month to month, year to year. But then you need the persistence to be able to keep going through these challenges, through things that pop up, through, defeat, not seeing the results when you've put in all this work. That's one of the biggest things I see is, a lot of people put in all this work. They don't get the result that they were hoping for, that they wanted, or they think they deserve. But generally, the result is right around the corner. As long as they just persist for long enough, and they provide themselves, they take the opportunities when they come up, that's where, they start to see some of the results come through, and their hard work has been worth it. So I think those three things, again, it's a simple approach, but again, it doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to be kept simple, in my opinion. To I guess get the best out of yourself.
Sure. Makes sense. That's
Yeah.
really good. So, you just hit on that. Now, that leads me into the next one, with that new generation, and I'm sure you went through this when you started your career. How did you handle like the whole level of expectation, maybe individually you placed on yourself, as well as other people around you, of this is supposed to happen, for you. You're the next whatever, this is supposed to happen. How did you handle those expectations and not lose focus of what you just talked about? Like, you have to go through that process and be patient and be persistent.
Yeah, I think, it's obviously having really good people around you as well to support you through that and help guide you. But also bringing it back to, again, like that awareness of what's going on in your own head. So bringing it back to, like, what are my goals? What are the things that, a big one is what you can control, and letting go of the things that you can't control. I think it's a simple thing to say, but there's so much going on in our world these days, like, obviously phones and social media and all that kind of thing. It's, I think a lot of people these days have got that, FOMO, the fear of missing out, with a lot of stuff. So I think with that, it's about bringing it back into, again, what are your goals? Is, what's the timeline that you've given yourself here? Putting things into perspective, like, where have you come from and where are you going? Like, I had an athlete I'm helping here, and he's an 18-year-old. He's been going along pretty well, and I've been looking after him for probably the last year. And it's probably not until like the last 6 or not even that, even probably last 3 months, where he's kind of really stepped up. He's starting to lift more in the gym. He's moving a lot better. He's putting on a bit of muscle. He's looking better on the velodrome. And then we were meant to race, actually, I think it was last week, but then because of COVID, they called off the race in a state. And I said, okay, well, let's just do a bit of a mock-up race here in Perth. And yeah, cool. He's gone out there, and in my opinion, he's done very well, but he hadn't done the times that he'd been wanting to do. And I'm like, okay, let's just have a look at where you've come from here, man, in 1 year, in 12 months, which really isn't that long, in a career, to be honest. And, let's just look at the last 3 months. And we went through it all, and he's just gone, shit, okay, like my squat's gone up 30 kilos, he's power cleaning more, he's his max power's gone up. He's packed on a few kilograms of muscle. Like he's got his nutrition dialed in now, which took him some time. And so I think it's about reviewing, again, so the communication thing with coaches and staff is, talking about these things. If you're feeling this way, you got to communicate. You communicate with your coaches. Like, they're the ones with the experience. They've been there, they've got years on you, and, that means they have the experience. They've got some things to tell you, they'll be able to talk you through it and start to look back at, again, where you've come from, where you're at now, and then potentially what things, all right, if we're here now, maybe we need to progress things, or we need to, give it more time and let's see what happens. Like, it's, I think it's about, communication and being open about those things. Yeah.
Yep. It's so true. It's just some of the days after a game or competition where some of my athletes have just placed such heavy individual expectations. I got to go out and do this and this and this. Like, that's when you don't play well or perform well, when you have this preconceived notion of, like, I have to do this. So that kind of leads me, let's talk about the way you competed, I guess. So expectations, whatever, you knew how to kind of handle that, but athletics is a game of mistakes. So, like, every athlete's going to make a mistake some way, somehow in their craft. How did you not let those mistakes kind of compound and become, like too many mistakes in a row? How did you just get that mentality of that next play mentality?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's about, when you do a race or when you do a competition, absolutely 100%. And, you'd see this all the time with basketball, is you've got to sit down and review what's happened. You've got to take notes. I think that's where, as an athlete, early on, I never really used to take notes or jot things down when I was at a race. And then, in the moment, I think you see things differently in the moment than when you're, the day after a competition. Obviously your recall's still good, but it's probably even better as it's happening. But that's obviously, it creates some challenges in itself. Like, you don't want to be reviewing a play while you're still in the middle of a game. But I think that's where it's, you jot. I started writing in my book at races, like, this is what happened, this is what I did. Didn't go into details about why or how. That's for after. It was just take this note, whether it was a one-worder, one-liner, whatever, just to be able to have that recall to bring it back into, okay, like, so that when we review it after, this is what I could have done better, that sort of thing. So I think reviewing a lot of your races and being like brutally honest with yourself, and with your coach and your staff, looking at the things that I guess you could have done better. So, because it's not, and when I say brutally honest about yourself, it's not a, really give yourself a kick up the arse. It's more of just, what were you thinking at that time when you made the mistake? Like, what was the thought process? If it's, because maybe, there are often times, like, as athletes, we are pretty hard on ourselves too. So when you review these things, there may be a mistake where you're absolutely, like, you've brought yourself down, like, you're being really hard on yourself. Then when you review it and talk about it, it's like, well, my thought process was actually pretty good, but what happened was to some extent out of my control. Because you are playing against other human beings. Like, you don't know what they're thinking and what they're doing. So athletes are definitely pretty hard on ourselves, and it's really important to review those things, and look at why you made the decisions, if it in fact was actually your decision, or was it the opposing team that kind of led you to do what they wanted you to do. And that's where you can pick up a lot of tactical nous through that sort of thing. Like with track cycling, when you do the sprint race, it's one-on-one. It's just mano a mano. It's pretty intense mentally, because you haven't kind of got the team backing you up there to give you the confidence sometimes. Yeah, so it is pretty intense. And the thing is too to remember is that, winning isn't always pretty. I think a lot of athletes, and I've been one of them, where you're always waiting for the perfect time, but there is no perfect time.
Nope. Doesn't
There is no
exist.
perfect time. Yeah, you wait long enough, you're never going to give yourself the opportunity to win anything. So I think, and look, I have lost that many races. Like, I think if you looked at my percentage over my career, it's probably like, I don't know, 5% win. Like, it's not it. And like, if you look at it like that, people think, what? Like, have you had so much success? But that's how small it is. Like, that's the sort of, it's a small window, but the thing is, you have that 5% of success because you've had that 95% of losses that you have the opportunity to learn something from. So that's the important bit, is to review and take those losses seriously. I think a lot of we see athletes where they, you call them a bad loser, whatever. They're obviously pretty passionate about what they're doing, as we all are. But, is it, are you learning something from it? Are you taking something away from it? If you're, losing your temper and cracking it and things like that, it's not actually going to help you to learn something from that and move on. It's a really, really important part of the process is going through those losses, taking something, like, at least get something for it, at least get a win and learn something from it, and then use it so it doesn't happen next time.
Right.
There's a million things that can go wrong. There's a million mistakes that can happen. We want to learn something from every loss, so that then we're ticking off one of those million mistakes that can happen, so that we don't let them happen again. The only way to do that is by reviewing, talking about it, being open about it, and then learning from them.
So true. So, and it's crazy though, how many athletes have such egos where they're almost ashamed or embarrassed, to go back and look at the film and break down. And it's hard for their ego to overcome that. But yeah, you absolutely nailed it. To get better, keep growing, you've got to learn from your mistakes and study and so forth.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, fear of missing out and the new generation and cell phones. I know in athletics, it's a huge, huge negative, with today's athlete, where no matter what sport or how old, 12 years old, 14, whatever, there's always a group of people or an entourage around them having some level of, whether it's family, coaches, whatever. And the circle of people around these athletes have a tremendous amount of influence. I guess how did you narrow your circle around you where they weren't giving you negative advice or trying to maybe you should be with this coach, or you should be training this way, or you should be doing this? Like, no one knows what goes on inside the locker room or practice or whatever, except your tight circle. Can you maybe talk about how did you narrow those circle of people around you?
Yeah, definitely. Look, it's a huge one. This, I see it a lot. It happens a lot in cycling, where you have like a really talented junior, and then you want to say, not necessarily fall in with the wrong group, but they start to make friends with some of the people that their goals aren't really aligned, and then they start to drift off, and you've got a huge talent that's just been wasted, and they're not in the sport anymore. Which is really, really unfortunate. And you can't get to everyone for sure, but I think one of the big things for me was working on it. And you mentioned it before, like circle of friends, because I've got I wrote it down here because it's anyway. So you got the inner circle, the mid circle, and then the outer circle. And I think realization for me was when I looked at it like that, because like when I did have some success, there was obviously a lot of people that started, all of a sudden all these people found my phone number, and I'm like, who the hell are these people? And look, it is enticing because you think, oh wow, like people want to know me. I've had some success. Yeah, this is cool. You got sponsors calling you. These people, they want to be your friends. They sound amazing. All this kind of thing. It's like, hang on a second. Let's just step back here. And I was kind of lucky that I did have, you know, a really close friend or mentor around me that, you know, I spoke to, whether it was daily or at least weekly, you know, about a lot of these things. It's probably daily. You know, we still chat now. Like I talk to him about, you know, what I'm going to do now. Now I'm not cycling anymore, and what I want to focus on, and all these sorts of things. So we still talk now. But I was very lucky to have. I say lucky to have. Like when I talked to him about this, he says, "Well, you let me in." So that's, you know, am I lucky? But no, I opened myself up to that. Obviously, there was something in me that was like, yep, okay, I need a person like this in my life, and you know, it does work that way. As an athlete, you know, or anyone, you need to be open. If you want help, you need to let it in too, because you never know who's out there that could, you know, really come in and help change your life for the better too. But when I looked at it like with this circle analogy, it was like, well, who's in the inner circle? Well, to me, it was my coach, my mentor, you know, my wife. Yeah, she was an ex. You can probably see her in the background here. She was an ex-cyclist as well. Now an Australian champion figure athlete. But yeah, obviously, look, I'll say this, but it's not everyone's partner or wife is probably going to be in that inner, but they're definitely going to be in the middle one. Like, as you know, sometimes they do contribute. You know, we all love them and all that sort of thing. But yeah, look, for me, my wife was in there. My coach was in there. My mentor was in there. And that was it. They were the people that had my best interests at heart, that I trusted. And, you know, basically I drew this up. Like, I think it's really important it's quite intimidating. And I felt quite selfish doing that. But you know what? To have success, you need to be selfish. And I, as an athlete, I actually struggled with the word selfish for quite a long time, because I saw it as a negative word. You know, when you see people that are selfish, I guess it's just how I was brought up as well. I was thinking, oh, that person's selfish. That's not really nice. But then, you know, as I kind of got older and started to learn more about it, it's like, well, no, it's not. Being selfish doesn't mean that you're rude or that you're a bad person or that sort of stuff. It just means that you are so focused on your goals that you're not letting the other things outside of that distract you. So I think it's really important to be selfish in that, but writing these things down. And if it means that you're writing on it, like we had a whiteboard at home, I wrote it on the whiteboard. So every day I'd walk past it in the morning when I was going to get my breakfast, and I'd see that's the circle, you know, in the middle of the circle. So you got your inner circle, people that you trust, people that are advising you, people that you can always go to and bring your focus back in. Okay, well, what's actually good for what we are trying to achieve? And another word there is we. Every time I spoke to my coach, I'd always say we. What are we doing next? How, you know, same with my wife. You know, same with my mentor. It was a we. It was a team. And, you know, words are really powerful if you use them over and over and over and over. So obviously, as part of that circle, you've got the middle. You had things like, I'd say, your team staff, things like that. You know, it's important to obviously have them as part of it, but obviously create enough distance so that, you know, it's not influencing some of the things that your coaches are telling you and things like that as well. And then the outer circle, and obviously you got your close friends and stuff in there as well in that middle one. The outer circles, you know, people like sponsors, acquaintances, things like that. So I think it is difficult. I'm not going to say that it's easy as an athlete, but it's where you also need to have awareness. And if it comes down to, like, I got to a point where I was saying, you know, if I was meeting with someone or whatever, I'd put them into a category. You know, it's, and like, I know that sounds bad, but it's like, you know, if it helps you to be able to, and again, it's not a bad thing. It just helps. It's helping if it helps you distinguish between this. And, you know, you meet with a sponsor and you say, okay, look, they're a sponsor. They're in this outer ring. It doesn't mean that you treat them any differently. It just means that you have the understanding that, okay, like, they're here. I'm not going to let them influence where we are heading as a team. You know, so I think it's really important to have you know, your inner circle, because then you've got a barrier.
Yep.
You know, got people to talk to and get advice from in certain situations. Also people that can, red flag things for you when you don't see them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really important.
Don't feel bad, because it's so important that those people in that inner circle have your best interest. Like
Yeah,
I
definitely.
had a player who was highly, highly ranked coming in out of high school, and he was a NBA first round, whatever. And his first month and a half, things went horrible for him. I mean, he played horrific, and he had to make the hardest decision of his life. He had to tell his parents and grandmother 2 days before every competition, don't call me, don't text,
Yeah.
stay away, and I will contact you after the game. And like, that's a really difficult conversation to have with your family. And when he made that decision, just pressure came off, lights came on, and he was performing at a high level. So I think you really hit it right there of like, you got to be surrounded by people who really genuinely have, your best interest,
Yeah. It's a big point you bring up about family too, because that's like, I had a similar thing with my parents where I'm like, okay, there's no more messages, no phone calls, no nothing, like a couple of days before events, because they're emotional. They can easily throw your focus off. So yeah, it is a smart thing to do, as hard as it is.
Yeah. Well, that's got two more questions for you, and you just kind of really hit on this next one. But I guess you have your inner circle, the people that you trust. You surrounded yourself by really good, genuine people. How did you now? It's competition time. It's getting close. Whatever. Like, how did you mentally limit distractions? You had family, everything. Like, you're focused on yourself. You're being selfish, like in a good way. But like, how did you mentally just get rid of all these distractions?
Yeah.
It's time to go. Like it's time to go. Like, how did you just turn that off?
Yeah, I think again, a big thing is to write down how you're going to approach it. So whether it's a month before or 2 weeks before, I actually think it's really good to somewhat plan these things out. Like, I know there's obviously a lot of things that are out of your control. So, I don't mean like, at 7 a.m. I'm going to do this or whatever, because you don't know that, the coach might call a team meeting at 7 a.m. You're not going to know these things. But I mean more the mental approach, so that, 2 days before I'm going to, cut my phone, I'm cutting social media, I'm not going to check it, I'm not going to look at it, I'm not going to do that sort of stuff. Write down your trigger words. This is my trigger words for leading up to an event 2 days before. Again, awareness. Am I getting distracted? Am I hanging out in the food hall in the Olympic Village, talking to people that, I've never met before, that are from other sports, and then, I'm sort of sitting there and I'm sitting in there for 2-3 hours drinking coffee, not, getting as much rest as I can with my feet up, just chilling out, watching a TV show or chatting to my teammate in the room or whatever. Again, awareness. So having the awareness that, what's going on, are my thoughts positive? One big thing I think with psychology, or that one of my father's close friends taught me, was you've got, again, a circle, but our thoughts basically go in a loop. So if you've got a negative thought, well, what's going to happen to that negative thought is going to come back around again. It's going to come back around again. We have the opportunity to change that thought. No matter the situation, scenario, people we're around, we have the power to change that. So it's important to be aware of that when you get something negative to come in. The thing that he actually said to me, I don't know if I can swear on here, but he said, thanks for coming, fuck off. And he'd put a positive thought in there. And that's got a lot of power. Like, you do something like that, it's got a lot of power to do that. So using some of those techniques that you've either built with your coach or built with your mentor or built with your sports psychologist, you build those things in, and you plan out the lead up to the event. I think that's really important, is having a plan in place so that you don't get to that point, get distracted, get flustered, your heart rate goes up, your adrenaline's pumping, because you always think about these things, you're wasting your energy, and then before you know it, you're getting on the start line, you're like, I'm knackered. Like, what's just happened the last 2 days? You want to plan these things out. I think that's, it's really important. Just like a training program, you put so much emphasis, we put so much emphasis on the training and the preparation, getting our body rate, putting good food in there. It's really important also to plan that mental side of things leading up, because you have just so much control over that. Yeah.
Awesome. So true. Okay. You're not defined by your career as a track athlete, right? Like you're not. You got great things ahead of you, like big time. So with all of your success and accomplishments, what's next for you to accomplish? Like what's left?
Yeah, it's a really good question, man. I think I think it'd be really, really cool to I've been really fortunate as an athlete to have some of the success that I did, but that's not the most important thing. As you just touched on, for me, it's the people that I ran into and the people that shaped me into who I am. And I'm really lucky to be able to have had those people around me and learn from them. And I really want to keep on learning a lot more. There's a lot of things, obviously, with from the strength and conditioning side of things that I want to dive into a lot more, and like human performance and things like that, which is awesome. But I think the biggest impact I can make is just helping people, believe in themselves more, get in their head a bit more, help them to become better people. And, which is what a lot of the coaches and mentors have done for me. That's a really powerful thing, because, a lot of the time, and that goes for anything. It could be, at the moment I'm doing some personal training, at a Shredded HP in Perth, and, I'm loving it because, it's not sports performance, but it's more, I'm getting to do something I'm really passionate about, and that's, help people believe that they can be better. So the same thing that you are doing, for sports performance, I'm doing that. I'm really passionate about seeing people succeed, and seeing their eyes light up when they do have some success, whether it's in the gym or whether it's with their nutrition or whether it's with at work and things like that. I think I get a lot out of helping others be better. So I think that's where it's kind of headed for me, is whether you want, I don't know, life coach, something like that, but there's so many terms around these days, but I just really want to take that knowledge, build on it, and help people be better humans if I can.
Awesome. You got a great story, and you got a great mindset, and you got so many things to share and evoke change in people and impact people's lives in such a positive manner. So it's been wonderful, like really, really good. And I appreciate you being open and sharing your experiences, and it's going to help so many other athletes and people beyond this. And this has just been absolutely wonderful. So you got great things ahead for you, and I wish you the best of luck. And it's just been awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Preston. No, it's really, really good to chat, man. And hopefully, some athletes can take something out of this and help their own careers. Yeah,
for sure. Well, good luck to you, and I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay.
Right. Thanks, mate.
Too easy. Cheers.